Hello, everyone, wherever you are watching. My name is Dov Lipman. Wishing all of you well. Stay safe, stay strong through this very difficult crisis that all of us in the world are dealing with together, and we're certainly thinking of all of you during this difficult time. I had the great honor of serving as a member of the 19th Knesset, and now I'm blessed to serve as the Senior Manager for Community Outreach for Honest Reporting. And at Honest Reporting, what we try to do very often is make sure you understand the truth behind the story, what's really going on. If you see the headlines today, you're going to hear about democracy collapsing in Israel from both sides of the political equation in Israel. You will have people who are saying there's a speaker of the Knesset, of our parliament, who is considering ignoring a ruling of the court. That's the end of the rule of law in a country. That's crazy. On the other hand, you have the Speaker of the Parliament of the Knesset saying the courts are trying to interfere with the running of the parliament. Where is separation of powers? That act is the end of proper democracy in Israel. Which side is right? Which side is wrong? There is so much confusion about this. Those on the left side of the equation, and you'll hear this in the more left-wing media, Netanyahu and his supporters are throwing out democracy. Those on the right, and certainly in the right-wing media, will say that Gantz and his supporters, they're the ones who are throwing out democracy. Which is it? Well, like everything, there's a lot of gray area here, and that's part of the excitement of being in a country that's just 72 years old and working out what it means to be a Jewish and a democratic state. We're going through what we would call our first major constitutional crisis. And my goal today is to give you the background. I'll present you the perspective of both sides in an unbiased manner, and you can make your own determination in terms of which side you think is right, or maybe you'll decide not to support any side at all and just understand the challenge that Israel is faced with right now. On March 2nd, we had an election in Israel, and at the end of the election, we don't have a president elected, we don't have a prime minister elected, we have 120 members of Knesset that are elected. Those 120 members are sworn in to office, and we have a parliament, and we have a Knesset without a new executive branch, without a new government at that time. In this situation, at the end of this election, 61 of the 120 members have expressed support for Benny Gantz, the leader of Blue and White, former IDF chief of staff. 58 have expressed their support for Netanyahu, our longtime serving prime minister. Parenthetically, there's one who hasn't expressed support for either side, but it makes no difference in the equation. You still have the 61 to 58 or the 61 to 59 if she supports Netanyahu. But either way, we're stuck in this situation where we have 61 for one and 59 for 58 for the other. The next step is someone tries to form a government. And the president has given that task to Benny Gantz because he seems to have a majority. You need a majority in order to have a ruling coalition. He has 61 supporters, so he's been tasked and he has 4 weeks to form a government. But now we get into the crazy situation we have here in Israel. Because even though Gantz has 61 members of Knesset who have expressed support for him, he does not have a path towards forming a government with those 61. This is what puts us in this uncharted territory in Israeli politics and in Israeli history. And the reason why the 61 do not enable him to form a government is that part of his 61 are 15 seats of what's called the joint list that are made up of Arab parties in Israel. Israel has a 20% Arab minority. We're very proud of the fact that they have rights to vote, and it's a democracy, and they have their representatives in the Knesset. And those representatives are already serving in the Knesset, and they speak in the Knesset, and they'll have positions in the Knesset. The question is about the joint list joining the government. And this is where we have a problem, because there are some members of the joint list who have expressed radical views supporting terrorists, supporting terrorist activity, being against the state of Israel being a Jewish state. And there are members of Blue and White, of Benny Gantz's party, who don't want to have them together with them in a government. They could be in the Knesset, they'll be in the parliament, but to be in the executive branch and making some of the most critical decisions, to have people with those perspectives, they don't want to have that. And by the way, Israel Beitenu, another one of the parties that supports Benny Gantz, led by Dov Lipman, they won't want to sit together in a coalition in the executive branch together with the joint list. And by the way, the joint list themselves, while they're supporting Gantz in his efforts to unseat Netanyahu, they don't necessarily want to sit in the government either. So we have this unusual situation where, on the one hand, Gantz has 61 supporters. They are a majority in the parliament. They want to work together to get things done through the parliament, but not move forward and create a government, or they can't essentially move forward and create a government. So what do they want to do? They're sort of stuck in this in-between situation. What they want to do during this in-between situation, when Israel has a parliament, but it doesn't have a new executive branch, and Benny Gantz has not been made prime minister, but they have a Knesset majority, and they want to move forward and get things done in the parliament with that majority. And most important for them, and this was their agenda, Benny Gantz's agenda in Blue and White in the elections, is they want to unseat Benjamin Netanyahu. They feel that he's been prime minister for too long. There should be term limits. They feel that he's under indictment for corruption charges. He's going to be starting a trial in May. He cannot be prime minister in this situation. And they want to use their Knesset majority in this interim time, without having a government that they're controlling, to pass legislation to remove Netanyahu from office, to say you can't be a prime minister in this situation, in this interim government. You can't be the one tasked with forming a government if you are under indictment. A very legitimate perspective. In order to do that, they need to take control, so to speak, of the Knesset and the Knesset agenda. How do you do that? The first step is to hold a vote for Speaker of the Knesset. The current Speaker of the Knesset is Yuli Edelstein from the Likud party. He's the Speaker from the previous governments that we've had, and they want to have a vote for Speaker of the Knesset. And they want to put in member of Knesset Meir Cohen from Blue and White to be the Speaker of the Knesset. He'll then control the agenda, and they can bring the laws to remove Netanyahu from office to the Knesset floor, and they have their 61 votes, all of them, even if they won't sit in a government together, they want to move forward with this agenda, and that is what they would like to do. Now, in order to bring the vote to the Knesset floor, to choose a new speaker, guess who has to okay that? The current Speaker of the Knesset. And he's Yuli Edelstein from the Likud party. Netanyahu is their leader. They have chosen him as the leader, even while he's under indictment, even while he's going to trial. They feel he's the best person to lead Israel. He's the most experienced. He has kept Israel safe. He has helped Israel with its incredible economy. Even now, in the corona crisis, he's the one who's leading the way. He is our leader. And we do not want to give Blue and White control of the Knesset without them being in control of a government. And then they'll pass this legislation against Netanyahu. And Yuli Edelstein has said the law in Israel does not require him to bring a vote about a new speaker to the floor of the Knesset until there's a brand new government. And the reason for that, he says, is very obvious, because who knows who the new prime minister will be. You don't want to have a new speaker voted in, and he might actually end up being in the opposition. That would be impossible. It would be a nightmare for the parliament, for the Knesset, if you have a prime minister who's trying to move forward with his agenda, and the Speaker of the Knesset, who has control over what goes to the Knesset floor and what laws can be voted on or not, he's actually in the opposition. He'll hold everything up. So Yuli is saying, I do not want there to be a vote over this issue on the Knesset floor. I will decide when the right time is. I have until a new government is formed. Let's see how things play out in this process of trying to form a government, before we bring such an important decision, the speaker, the leader of the Knesset, to the floor of the Knesset. Now, usually during these 28 days that Gantz has to form a government, there would be negotiations with all the different parties, and he would try his best to bring together the majority and present a government to the Knesset. In this case, like I mentioned before, with the 61 that support him, he doesn't have a path towards that. So there have been negotiations about a unity government, especially in the situation of emergency, where we have this corona crisis, which is affecting the health and the economy of Israel, and efforts for Blue and White and Likud, the two largest parties at 36 and 33 seats, to work together. Netanyahu would be prime minister for the first part of the term, then Gantz would take over afterwards. And there have been negotiations about this, and Edelstein is saying, let's see if that can happen, and then we can decide who the speaker is going to be. All of this has come to a head because Blue and White has brought this issue. They filed a petition with the Supreme Court, and they said, the Speaker of the Knesset is not allowing the majority to rule. He's stopping this vote from happening. Order him to bring this to a vote. The Knesset attorney, I should mention, was uncomfortable with the Speaker not bringing it to a vote, but he did side with Edelstein in terms of the problems that could happen if you have a Speaker from the opposition and the Prime Minister not getting anything done. The Attorney General of the State of Israel actually supported the petition and said that he has to, the majority, he has to bring it to the floor. And we now have a situation where here is what has developed. We have the Supreme Court of Israel has ordered Yuli Edelstein, the current speaker, to bring a vote to the floor of the Knesset by tomorrow, by Wednesday. He must do so according to the court because they've sided with Blue and White's side, which says there's a majority. Yuli Edelstein has said, or there's indications that he said, I'm not going to do so. I don't listen to ultimatums. I need to protect my side. And what does he mean by my side? He's saying it is improper for the courts, for the judicial system, to interfere with what is happening in the parliament. There's separation of powers, and he and his supporters, and even ministers in his government who have said, don't listen to the Supreme Court, they're saying, we are here to protect democracy. Democracy demands separation of powers. The parliament must be independent. The court cannot tell the Speaker of the Knesset what should or should not be brought to the Knesset floor and when. Blue and White and the justices of the Supreme Court are saying, we are here to protect democracy. You, Yuli Edelstein, the Speaker of the Knesset, are destroying democracy. Democracy says that the majority rules, and there's a majority in the parliament right now. They want this vote to come to the floor. You are not allowing that to happen. We need to protect democracy. One side saying that the other side is destroying democracy, and we are protecting democracy. The other side is saying the same. By the way, I should mention, parenthetically, that in the interim, the majority has ruled, and Blue and White has set up committees in the Knesset. They now have a Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, which they chair. They now have a Finance Committee, which they chair because they do have a majority. They've set up a special committee for the deal with the corona crisis. So there is some parliamentary activity that is going on, but we have this major, I would call it, constitutional crisis that's going on between the two sides. And you're going to be hearing headlines, like I said, democracy is being destroyed in Israel, and both sides are making that claim. And that is where the situation stands today. The judges saying majority rules, let this vote take place in the Knesset. The Speaker of the Knesset saying Parliament has to have freedom to act, and the justices cannot interfere. Some of Edelstein's supporters have told him to not listen to the courts. Unbelievable. Don't listen to the courts. What does that mean for the rule of law in Israel? Some of his supporters have said, listen, you got to listen to the courts. We disagree with their decision, but you have to do so. But now you can understand where both sides are coming from. And the way I see it, it's a true battle of democracy. And I'm proud to live in a country where there's a battle of figuring out what does it mean to be a Jewish democratic state in the 21st century. I view it as history playing out in front of our eyes, dealing with a situation that's never happened before. And as difficult as it is to see these two camps so strongly against each other, I know that it's going to be resolved one way or another through the rule of law. Perhaps the courts will put sanctions on Edelstein and force him. Perhaps they'll give him the freedom to disobey and decide how the parliament should run. But one way or another, we have democracy here, and this is the vibrancy of Israeli democracy. It's a difficult time to see this clash taking place, but I think it's just important for all of you and for Honest Reporting to present to you both sides of this very difficult issue. As the days progress, we'll certainly report to you about how this all plays out, and I hope this has helped you to understand exactly what is going on behind the scenes in this clash in Israeli democracy and in trying to figure out and sort out what to do in the wake of the last election. And I just wish all of you well, good health, and like I said in the beginning, we should all just be strong in dealing with this crisis, and Israel should be strong in dealing with the health crisis, with the economic crisis, and also with its political crisis. Wishing everyone a good day.